Hello everyone. Now we'll start with the most important chapter, and that is levy and collection. And as you know, levy of any indirect tax is on an event. Levy of every indirect tax, whatever it may be, nowadays it is GST, is on a taxable event. Event means happening of something, right? Event means happening of something. So GST as a whole, whether you call it as CGST, which we are studying right now, or SGST or IGST or UTGST, the topics remain, the concept remains the same in all the four laws. That levy means imposition also, levy is called as imposition also, of GST will be on an event called as supply. Supply of what? Goods or services or both. But supply word is very important. So in this chapter we are going to study the levy. Section 9 will come, which will actually say that the tax is levied. But before that we have to study the definition of supply in section 7. So we'll see section 7, then we'll see section 8 also, that is for composite nature of goods and services. Then we'll see section 9, the imposition section, and then we'll see an alternative method of levy of tax under section 10, which is called as composition scheme. Okay, so all these things we are going to study. So starting with section 7, it says scope of supply means what all things will come in the definition of supply. So this is very important. Okay, so let's start. And it's a very simple section to say, but you have to remember all the intricacies, because question can come on any one of these intricacies. Question will not be an overall question, it will touch the intricacies. So section 7 says that for the purpose of this act means CGST Act. Similar definition you will find in SGST and UTGST and IGST. Okay, so the concept of supply remains same for all the four acts. For the purpose of this act, the expression supply includes, number 1 means A, all forms of supply. So there are 3 points, as you can see, A, B and C, and all of them touch a different point. Okay, so first point is the general definition. A is the general definition of the word supply, and it says it includes all forms of supply. So as far as the forms are concerned, it can be anything, like examples are given there. All forms of supply of goods or service or both, such as. So such as means examples. So few examples are given there, but it starts with all forms. So these examples that we are going to see are not exhaustive, they are inclusive examples, because the definition is all forms. So whether of these nature as are given here, or it can be anything else also. So these examples are sale. The supply can be by way of sale. Sale means for consideration, or transfer. Transfer may or may not be for consideration, like gift is also considered as transfer, though there is no consideration. So they have included the word transfer also. So sale is primarily for consideration, transfer may be for consideration or may not be for consideration. Barter, exchange. Barter and exchange means goods with goods or goods with services, means the consideration is in the form of other goods or service and not in money. Then license, rental, lease. License, rental, lease are of the same nature, though the different words are used, they are of the same nature. They mean where ownership is not transferred, right, but some rights are given, like right of use, right of enjoyment is only transferred, but they are also included in the definition of supply. So tax can be imposed on lease and licenses also, where the ownership remains with the first person, only the right of use is given to another person. So in the first examples like sale, transfer, barter, exchange, the ownership was getting transferred, but in license, rental and lease, only the right of use is getting transferred and not title. Okay, so what do you understand here? That even if the title is not transferred, it can still be called a supply. So sale is also supply, and license and lease is also a supply. Then disposal word is also used. Disposal means where suppose the goods become scrap and we have to remove the scrap. So disposal is also covered by the definition of supply. Means if it is for valuable consideration like sale, transfer, that is also supply. And if it is for any kind of disposal, it can be scrap, it can be refuse, it can be expired goods, even if they are disposed of without consideration. Later on we'll see this point. Even if without consideration, they can still be called as supply. But in this point, clause A, they have said or agreed to be made. Disposal. So here disposal is with consideration, right? I'll tell you. Made or agreed to be made. Underline these 2 points also. Made or agreed to be made. So it says clause A that it includes all forms of supply. All forms like sale, exchange, barter, transfer, license, lease and disposal. Made means this transaction has actually taken place, okay, or agreed to be made. Means even if the transaction is agreed to be made, like agreement to sell, agreement to transfer, agreement to do this, agreement to do that, that agreement can also be considered as supply. So not only actual supply, but agreement to supply is also taxable. Okay. Now 2 conditions. That all these examples that we have seen will be called as supply if 2 conditions are satisfied. These 2 conditions are that it should be for a consideration. Condition number 1, there should be a consideration. Consideration can be full consideration, it can be part consideration, it can be valuable, it can be invaluable, but consideration should be there. It can be in cash, it can be in kind, like barter exchange means consideration in kind. They will also be considered. For a consideration by a person in the course or furtherance of business. Condition number 2. So condition number 1, there should be consideration. Condition number 2, there should be business. Means this sale, exchange, whatever is taking place should be in the course or furtherance of business. In the course means regularity. Regularly we are dealing with something and we are selling it. So that becomes in the course of business. And for furtherance of business means that if we have to do something in order to expand the business, in order to set up a new business, that is furtherance of business. That will also be considered. Okay. So 2 conditions are attached. There should be consideration and there should be business. Means whatever transaction has taken place should have a connection, should be in relation to, should be out of your business. Okay, so let's take some examples. Like sale. You sometimes sell scrap from your home, right? You have a lot of scrap, lot of things coming out, or some for example an old TV. You are changing your TV. The World Cup is coming, so you are changing your TV. You are buying a new television, 100-inch television, big, covering the whole wall. So you had an old television which was 24-inch television. So you have to scrap it out now, or you can sell it in second hand to somebody at a very discounted price, cheap price. Will GST be imposed on sale of that television, the old one from your house? No, of course not. Why? There is consideration, but it is not in the course of business. Are you a businessman? Do you have business of buying and selling televisions? No. Right, so therefore there will be no GST. But if you are running a television shop and you sell a TV out of there, then yes, it is in the course of business. It is for consideration and in the course of business. So then GST is chargeable. Understood? So then GST will be applicable. So there should be consideration and there should be business. If both the conditions are satisfied, then these transactions, which can be of any type, they say transaction can be of any type. Transactions can be of any type, but if it is in the course of business and there is consideration, then it will be called a supply and GST would be chargeable. Understood? Simple. Then second point. Now these 2 points that we are going to see, B and C, are exceptions of A. They are exceptions of A. A says, if we read A in a negative sense, then what does it mean? That if there is no consideration or if there is no business or if both are not there, then there will be no supply. Means every sale is not a supply. If it is in the course of business and it has consideration, if both the things are satisfied together, then only it is a supply, right? So if any one of these two is missing, then it is not a supply, right? So B and C give exception to this. That is, B says that if something is for consideration, now that's something I'll explain what it is. That if there is a consideration and it is not in the course of business, it is not in the course of business. So it says, okay, even if it is not in the course of business, but if there is consideration, then we will call it as supply. Okay, so it is an exception to A. So what it says, B, import of services. This is the transaction, import of services. Goods nahi, no goods, import of services. Import of services. Let's take an example. Import of service. Service can be anything like software. If you import software, then there is a service. If you use foreign websites for dealing with something or to get information out of it or something like that, then that is also a service, import of service. So import of service means where the service providers are outside India and the service receivers are in India and they're importing the service. Okay, so what it says, import of service for a consideration, means there is a consideration, whether or not in the course or furtherance of business. Simple. Whether or not in the course or furtherance of business. Means if it is in the course of business, fine. Even if it is not in the course of business, it will still be considered as supply. Now one thing you must remember, that import of goods is not covered by GST. It is covered by Customs Act. And we had seen in Customs Act that you impose IGST indirectly. When you import the goods, you have to pay basic customs duty, then additional customs duties, and also the GST in the form of integrated tax. So Customs Act covers the GST imposition on imported goods. So GST Act by itself doesn't deal with it. But import of services are dealt with by GST Act, not by the Customs Act. Customs Act doesn't deal with services, they only deal with goods. Okay, so therefore import of service is covered here in the GST Act, and it says that import of service for a consideration, if there is consideration, then it will be considered as supply, even if there is it is not in the course of furtherance of business. Okay, point to be noted. And third point, that is C, says activities specified in Schedule 1. So we'll see what are the activities prescribed in Schedule 1, made or agreed to be made without consideration. So see, this is also an exception to A, that even if there is no consideration, they means the transactions can be considered as supply. if they are defined in Schedule 1. So these are the two exceptions of the general rule. The general rule is that there should be consideration and it should be in the course of furtherance of business. But if business is lacking, then B covers that exception, and if consideration is lacking, then C covers it up. It can still be called as supply. Okay, so if I just noted down the conditions, then I'll note it down like this, a simple chart. Transactions like sale, exchange, transfer, that is transfer of ownership, so I'll just mention sale, one word out of it, or lease, that is rentals, lease, licenses, or disposal. So there are three types which are given there: sale, lease and disposal. The sale means sale, transfer, exchange, barter. So these four require transfer of ownership. Lease, rentals don't require transfer of ownership, they only give you a right in the asset and not the asset itself. And disposal, of course, means disposal of scrap, etc. So two conditions are required. Okay, I'll write in a different way. Consideration, business. So business means in the course of furtherance of business, and is it supply? So if consideration is there, yes, and business is also there, then is it supply? Yes, obviously it is supply. Secondly, if consideration is there but business is not there, the answer is no, then is it supply? Is it supply? So answer is no. If one of them is missing, then the answer is no. But the exception here, the exception is 7(1)(b), that is import of services. So in case of import of services, if the consideration is there, then it will be called a supply even if the business is not there. Okay, even if it is not in the course or a furtherance of business. Third point, if consideration is missing and business is there, then will it be called a supply? The answer is again no. Normally it should be no. If one of these two is missing, then it will not be called a supply. But there is exception, and that exception is given in Schedule 1. So there are a lot of transactions there, so I will not write 1 because there are many transactions. So transactions which are given in Schedule 1 will be considered as supply even if there is no consideration. Even if there is no consideration, but they are in the course of furtherance of business. But if both are missing, no consideration and not in the course of furtherance of business, then it will not be considered as supply. Not a supply under any circumstance, and there are no exceptions to this. Okay, understood the point? Good. So let's see. So that was given in 1. Understood? Very clear? Excellent. Then 1A says, where certain activities or transactions constitute a supply in accordance with the provisions of subsection 1. Mean 1A doesn't say that what is supply. It says it is already a supply. They constitute a supply. Supply is already there. Supply is proven as per subsection 1. They shall be treated either as supply of goods or supply of services as referred to in Schedule 2. So there will be a Schedule 2 also that we'll see in I think the next lecture or the next to next lecture, in which we'll see that if there is a supply, should it be called a supply of goods or should it be called a supply of service? There are certain areas, gray areas, which can be considered as goods or which can be considered as services. So government says, okay, we'll define them. In schedule 2 we'll write them, and we'll write whether these are to be considered as goods or these are to be considered as service. Okay, so that we'll see. When we'll go to schedule 2, I'll explain the logic behind it. Right now I am not explaining the logic. Then subsection 2 says that notwithstanding anything contained in subsection 1, activity or transaction specified in schedule 3 or such activities or transactions undertaken by the central government, state government or local authority in which they are engaged as public authorities as may be notified. These will also be notified by the government on recommendation of the council. But these transactions which are notified by the government, which have the characteristic of public authorities, means which are within the functions and roles and responsibilities of the government. The government is basically a public body now. They have to do a lot of things in public for the purpose of what we can say, protection of public and a lot of things. So these kind of services will not be taxable, shall be treated neither as supply of goods nor a supply of service, means they will not be taxable because they are neither goods nor service. So if they are neither goods nor service, means there cannot be a levy, and if there is no levy, no taxability, right? So these we call as negative list. More so schedule 3. The transactions which are defined in schedule 3 are called as negative list, means list of transactions which are not taxable at all. Like a simple example I'll give right now, employment. If you are a salaried person employed with a company doing a job 9 to 5 and getting salary for it, that salary is not chargeable to GST. You don't have to charge GST. So employment is out of taxability. It is one of the points given in schedule 3, employment. So there is no GST on employment, but there is GST on consultancy. If you are not a full-time employee and you are a consultant, you give your consultation, your expert advice to your company and get paid for it, then it is liable for GST. So only full-time employment or even part-time, but employment is exempt. Consultancies, services are chargeable. Okay, so this also we'll see in detail, schedule 3 items. And the public authority, whatever transactions are undertaken by the governments as a public authority, like policing. Policing is a public authority, what we can say, service. So it is not liable for GST. And then subsection 3 says that subject to provisions of 1(1)(a) and 2, the government may, on the recommendation of the council, specify by notification the transactions that are to be treated as supply of goods and not service, or service and not goods. So this gives the power to the government to make the list. Very good. That what is to be treated as goods and not service, and what is to be treated as service and not goods. Okay, so that we'll see. Then coming to the analysis, so whatever I have explained is given here in writing. That first clause A is the generic meaning. Generic means the general meaning. Generic means general meaning. And all these points were given subject to 2 conditions, that there should be consideration and it should be in the course of furtherance of business, right? And what were the transactions which are given there? Sale, transfer, barter, where ownership is transferred. Then exchange, lease. Exchange also ownership is transferred. But license, rental and lease, here the right to use is transferred. and not ownership. Oh my god. And not ownership. But that is also supply. Rental is also supply, liable to GST. You have to charge GST on the rent also. And disposal means like scrap, etc. Okay. Then in this explanation, there is a definition of consideration given. So let's see that definition also. Section 231 defines what is consideration. It says, in relation to supply of goods or service or both, it includes any payment made or to be made. Made means actually made. To be made means credit sale can also be there, where the person undertakes to pay in future, whether in money or otherwise. As we have seen, sale means money, but exchange, barter can be also covered. So otherwise means it can be in kind also. Okay, it can be in kind also. In respect of, in response to, or for the inducement of the supply of goods or service or both. Very interesting. 3 words were given. Let us understand all the 3. They are very important. In respect of, in response to, or for the inducement of. Very interesting points. See, I'll explain with examples. In respect of means when you go to a shop, you select some goods, you see the price, you see the tag on that goods, you select a good t-shirt and you see the price there, that the price is 999. Then you take out 1000 rupees on the counter and pay for the t-shirt. So that is in respect of. Means you are paying in respect of the goods that you have taken. Okay, so you have bought the goods and in respect of them you are making the payment. So when the payment is made after the transaction is undertaken or along with the transaction, either cash directly at the time of sale or later on, that is called as in respect of. Goods have come and I am paying in respect of. Services come and I am paying in respect of this service. Okay, CA has given his service to me and then I am paying him his audit fees. So that will be in respect of. Second is in response to. So in response to relates to a transaction where the supplier has supplied something and he was not sure whether you are going to take it or not. Like it happens in accounts, we have seen goods on approval basis, right? Goods sold on approval basis. So the supplier sends the goods to me and says that okay, you can select any one of them, whichever you like, or if you don't like anything, return everything to me. So he sends me 4 samples and says that you can accept any one of them as you like, as you wish. So I finally took up one of them, and then as I took it, I'll pay for it. So that is called as in response to. Means goods have come and in response to that I'm making some payment. So that payment will also be called as consideration for that goods or service. It may be service also. Okay, in response to. So there may not be a condition also to pay, but you still pay in response to. Like you go to a friend's shop, sweet shop, and you eat 4 gulab jamuns, and after eating them you think of making payment. Otherwise he was not asking for it, he's your friend, but still you take out 100 rupees note and you say that keep this as consideration for those 4 gulab jamuns that I have eaten in your restaurant. So that 100 rupees will be considered as not gift but as consideration, because it is in response to the gulab jamuns that you have transferred to your friend. Okay, so that 100 rupees, even though it may not be the actual price of those 4 gulab jamuns, it may be more, it may be less, I don't know, but it will be called as consideration in response to. And last is for inducement of. Now this is a reverse case. What happens is that I want to purchase a car. I want to buy a car. So I go to the dealership. I go to the dealership of that car, BMW series of cars, and I want that convertible. My marriage is scheduled 3 days from now, example, and therefore I want to buy a convertible so I can take my bride in the convertible, okay, for a ride after the marriage ceremony. So I went to the car dealer, BMW, and I said that I want this convertible. There's a convertible lying there. So I said I want this car. He says that no, we cannot give this to you because this is already bought by some other client of theirs, and he's going to come in 6 hours and going to take this car. So you can book a new car and it will be delivered to you minimum 10 days from now. I said no, I cannot shift my marriage. My marriage is 3 days from now. How can I wait for 10 days? They said that we cannot do anything, you have to wait for 10 days. I said, okay, what was the price of the car? He said 3.6 crores. I said, okay, 3.6 crores? No, not a problem for me. After all, it's marriage, and I get married only once in my lifetime. So it's fine, but I want it today. They say no, 10 days minimum waiting list. I said, okay, I'll do one thing. I'll pay you 4 crores. Instead of 3.6, I'll give you 4 crores. So I take full bag of money and keep it with him and give him time till evening to decide whether he wants to sell me or not. So I leave 4 crores on his table and come back home. Now that seller thinks twice and thrice and fries that what to do. Should I sell this car to this guy and say no to the first person? Because anyways the first person was going to pay him only 3.6 and I have deposited 4 crores. So he is gaining 40 lakhs straight away. So by evening he makes a call to me. He calls up and says, Farooq, let's do one thing. Okay, you can come tomorrow morning and take your car. I have decided to sell it to you. So here, see what is happening. The money that I gave him induces him to sell the goods to me, right? So that money that I gave him is not a gift or something. It is consideration for sale, including that additional 40 lakhs. So that is inducement money that induces him to sell goods to me. Okay, so that will also be called as consideration. So in respect of means which is normally paid afterwards, where the price is fixed and all. In respect of. In response to means I give some money to you in response to you giving some goods to me in response to. And third is inducement of, means consideration is given before and it results in sale. It induces the other person to supply goods or services or both, right? So 3 important wordings: in respect of, in response to, or for the inducement of. What? Supply of goods or service or both, whether by the recipient. Now another point, that this money or otherwise is anyways given. It can be money, it can be otherwise, means in kind also. Now the point is that who is giving, who is paying the consideration. So it says either by the recipient, consideration can flow from the recipient, or by any other person. Payment can be by any other person also. Like simple example, when you go to a tuition class for joining a class, you join the class, so you are the recipient of service. I am going to teach you, but normally you don't pay. It is your father or mother who pays, right? Or in some case brother, in some case even boyfriends or girlfriends, as the case may be. So money can come from any person. It can come from the recipient of the goods or service, or it can come from any other person, but shall not include. Finally, something is not included, and that is subsidy given by the central or state government. Underline, given by whom? Central or state government. If the subsidy is given by any other company or any other person, then that is consideration. It will be chargeable. But subsidy given by the central or state government is not taxable. So therefore it is kept out of the definition of consideration. Like it happens in case of fertilizers and all. If you are a manufacturer of fertilizer and you are selling one bag at 600 rupees, government says, okay, do one thing, you are selling to farmers, so cut down the price. Cut down the price by 300. So instead of 600, you sell it at 50%, that is 300, and 300 will be reimbursed to you by the government as subsidy. So now I will sell the bag of fertilizer at 300 and claim another 300 rupees from the government as subsidy. So that second 300 that I am claiming from the government as subsidy is not liable to GST. Understood? So that was clause A. Interesting one. Let's read it once again. Payment made or to be made. An actual payment might have been done or it is agreed to be made. Whether in money or otherwise, means it can be in money, it can be in kind. In respect of the payment which is going will be called as consideration if it is in respect of, in response to, or to induce the supply. Okay. So if it has a connection with supply, then only it will be called as consideration. Every money transferred by one person to another is not consideration. If that money is in respect of some supply, is in response to some supply, or is for inducement of supply of what, goods or service, or both, then only it will be called as consideration. But it excludes subsidies given by the central or state government. Secondly, the monetary value. Second is even more interesting. The monetary value of an act or forbearance. Act means doing something, forbearance means stop from doing something. You will not do something. So what it says, monetary value. How will find this monetary value of what you are doing? That we'll see in the valuation rules. Okay, don't think about it right now. When we'll go to the chapter of valuation and we'll see a lot of valuation rules, then you'll understand how to value this. But right now, act or forbearance in respect of, in response to, or for the inducement of the supply of goods or service, or both, whether by the recipient or by any other person, but shall not include any subsidy. So from here onwards, the definition is same as we saw in A. Okay, in respect of. So the definition remains the same. So I will not explain all those points again. But now what is happening, that it is not in money or in kind, but the consideration is an act or forbearance. Either it is doing something or not doing something. Okay, like for example, what example can I give here? Okay, let's take a very criminal example. So what is criminal about it? I'll tell you. You have got a piece of car. Okay, so you are a dealer, car dealer, and you have got this car, convertible. Okay, and I want to buy it. So you tell me that, okay, Farooq, I'll give this car to you, provided that you kill Mr. KK. Now, why do you want me to kill Mr. KK? Because he is troubling your girlfriend. He is troubling your girlfriend. He is trying to steal your girlfriend. So you give me car and say that, okay, I'll give you this car free of cost. I'll not even charge a single penny for it. But you do one thing for me. And what is the thing? Kill Mr. KK. I say, okay, no problem. I go and shoot KK. Okay, don't tell this to police. Huh? This is just an example, okay? So I go and kill KK and you give me the car. So point is that, will you be liable to pay GST on this car? The answer is yes. Is there a consideration? Yes. What is the consideration? My killing KK. So when I kill KK, killing KK is consideration for you. So this act of mine is a consideration for you for supplying the car to me. Understood? Interesting one, na? So there can be so many things which we do, and against that doing, you will sell me the goods, you will sell me services, you will give me a lot of things, goods or services or both. And what is the return? What is the consideration that I am giving you? By doing something that you wanted me to do. Similarly, forbearance is also there. Forbearance means not to do something. So now take an example of that. You are Mr. What? You are Rahul, and you have a girlfriend Neha. Okay, you are Rahul and you have girlfriend Neha. Neha, you have also become CA, she has also become CA, and she is starting with indirect tax classes, and she wants students. Obviously, none of the students are willing to join a new teacher, Neha, because they are all joining me for long. I have a good name, good repute in the market. So all students will join me. Who will join Neha? Nobody. And if nobody goes there, she is very disturbed. And she comes to her boyfriend, that is you, Rahul. And so, Rahul, please do something. I'm not having any students. What should I do? So Rahul comes to me and says, look, Farooq, you wanted a car. You wanted that car very badly. I said, yes, Rahul, I wanted it very badly. So you say, okay, I'll give you this car. I'll give you this car and don't pay me a single rupee for it. But just do one thing. Don't take 3 batches of indirect tax. Drop next 3 batches of indirect tax. Don't take the class. So I say, okay, I'll not take the class. So my not taking class, forbearance to act, forbearance to do something, is a consideration for you to supply your car to me. Understood? And what's the benefit that you will get? Benefit is simple. Benefit is that if I don't take the class, then all the students will go to Neha. And if they go to Neha, then Neha will earn money, and not only money but also satisfaction and happiness, which is more important for Rahul. Girlfriend's money is not that important, but her happiness and satisfaction is important, right? So my acting in a particular way or my not acting in a particular way, forbearance, is a consideration to you for selling your car to me. Understood? So what we'll do is we'll find out the monetary value of that act of forbearance, and that monetary value will become your consideration for car. Interesting. But finally it says that, however, a deposit given in respect of supply of goods or services or both shall not be considered as payment made for the supply unless the supplier applies such deposit as consideration for the said supply. Very simple and interesting one. Deposit is not considered as consideration because deposit is returnable now. The reason deposit is not considered as consideration is that it is returnable. Like, for example, I take a deposit from my students. Earlier, when I started with my pen drive classes, the pen drives were very costly. In 2014, when we launched the online classes, I was the first one to launch class on pen drive in India. Do you know this? No? Well, you should know. It's an important information. I was the pioneer of launching pen drives. Actually, pen drive, what we can say, the evolution of pen drive market was because of me. I'm not blabbering about myself, but I'm just telling you the facts. In 2014, I was the first one to launch pen drive, the lectures on pen drive. Otherwise, other teachers were there, but they were only in satellite mode. Student had to go to a center and watch the lecture, and if the lecture is missed, it was a loss. So therefore, I decided to launch pen drives so that students will never lose anything. They can watch anytime, at any place, at your leisure. Okay, so that's the funda, and we give repeat use also, repeat views, I mean to say. So nothing is lost, and you can revise also free of cost. So a lot of advantages are there. So I launched it in 2014. I was the first one to do that. Anyways, that's a old story. But what I used to do at that time, because the pen drives were very costly, so we had a scheme for 2 years, 14 and 15. We ran a scheme of returnable pen drives. Yes. So what we used to do, we used to take a deposit of 2,000 rupees. Actually, the pen drives are a little bit more costly, but okay, we took a deposit of 2,000 and we would send the pen drives. And after you finishing your lectures, if you would return your pen drives to us, we will return you your 2,000 rupees. So that was a deposit amount. Apart from the fees, we also took a deposit amount. So the question is, will this deposit amount be chargeable to GST? The answer is no. Deposit is not a consideration, but if a student doesn't return the pen drives on time and the time lapses and the contract cancels out, and then this 2,000 is applied towards sale, then it would be called as consideration. Okay, so if it is applied towards sale, towards supply, then it is consideration. But till the time deposit is deposit only, returnable nature, it is not consideration. Right? Good. So then that is given in the chart form also, that consideration can be payment or monetary value of act of forbearance. Payment can be money or otherwise. Then the other points are same. In respect of, in response to, or for the inducement of what? Supply. Supply of what? Goods or services, or both. Whom? By the recipient or any other person. But what is the exclusion? Subsidy given by the central and state governments. And lastly, deposit will not be considered as consideration unless it is applied towards consideration. Simple. Then second point is, should be by a person engaged in business. So now let's see the definition of business also. Definition is very simple. You don't need to mug up this definition. Just read it twice or thrice at the most. So what is the meaning of the word business? Let's see. Long definition. It includes, and the definition is inclusive, so that means that all these points are not exhaustive. Okay, so these are not exhaustive, means we can have any other kind of business also, which is not written here. But what is written? Let's see. Trade, commerce, manufacture, profession, vocation, because services are also covered. So trade, commerce, manufacture was used for business, and profession, vocation are used for services. Then adventure. Adventure, it doesn't mean climbing mountains. Adventure here means adventure in the nature of trade, commerce, manufacture, that we saw in the definition of business in income tax, right? Similarly, adventure. Then wager. Wager means where the transaction, the outcome is unknown, anything can happen. Or any other similar activity, whether or not for pecuniary benefit. Whether or not for pecuniary benefit means whether you do this with intention to make money and earn profit, or without intention of making profit, still both cases it is supply. If you buy and sell, you are doing it regularly in the course of business, you are trading, it is supply. Like there are those cooperatives and there are those consumer societies whose intention is not to make profit, so they buy in bulk and supply to their members. That is also supply. Okay, so profit motive, pecuniary benefit means profit motive, is not a criteria to define business. Is not a criteria to define business. Then activity or transactions in connection with or incidental or ancillary to the above. In connection with, incidental or ancillary. All incidental ancillary transactions will also be covered, like sale of scrap. I am selling the main goods, but I can also sell scrap. So that is incidental to my business. Then ancillary activities are there, like we can manufacture goods, and along with that we can do some ancillary activities, like we are manufacturing sugar out of sugarcane. Then there is a scrap called as bagasse, so we can also sell bagasse, or we can create electricity out of it and sell. So all those ancillary things are also covered. Then activity or transaction of the nature of A above, whether or not there is volume, frequency, continuity or regularity of such transaction. So if you are engaged in this trade, commerce, manufacture, etc., then even if it is inconsistent nature, it is not consistently done, it is not done on a large scale, it is very inconsistent, still it will be called as supply. Okay, still it will be called as business. Then supply or acquisition of goods including capital assets and services in connection with commencement or closure of business. So at the time of commencement, if we take some services, like we are setting up the factory and we take service of an architect for setting up a factory, that will also be called as business. It is in the course of business. Then provision by a club, association, society or any other body of the facilities or benefits to its members, as the case may be. So if you join a club and pay the club fees, that is also chargeable to tax. Okay, so that the club giving services and facilities to its members is also taxable. It is in the course of business. Then admission for a consideration of persons to any premises. If you take money for admitting people into a premises, that will also be business. Then services supplied by a person as the holder of an office which has been accepted by him in the course of furtherance of his trade, profession or vocation. Office which is held by them in course of furtherance of trade, profession, vocation. So write them directors. These are directors. So the service that they give is also taxable. That is business. But this doesn't include employees. This doesn't include employees. Employment is out of GST. This is only for directors. Then activities of a race club, including by way of totalizator or license to bookmaker, or activities of a licensed bookmaker in such club. So this is a technical jargon. Totalizator means the service. It is called a service to distribute money amongst the winners. Different people have bet on different horses, right? So which horse is won, which came first, which came second, which came third, and who are the people who have bet on those horses. So the money is finally distributed equitably. So that kind of service is there, called as totalizator. And of course the bookmakers. Bookmakers are the people who take bids. So that is chargeable. And any activity or transaction undertaken by the central government or state government or local authority in which they are engaged as public authorities. So firstly, this activity or transaction is considered as business, but then it is given in the exclusion of section 7. So there will be no tax. Then however, in case of import of service for a consideration, even if such services are imported otherwise than in the course of furtherance of business, it would be deemed to be supply. This we had seen 7.1b. Then comes transactions without consideration. Then we have seen that there is an exception. Even if certain transactions are without consideration, they can still be considered as supply. These transactions are given in Schedule 1. Okay, so this Schedule 1 is a long one, and this we will see in the next lecture. Okay.